So you've hit on this video link to find out who I am. And that's exactly what I want to do. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. Not the whole thing, but just give you an insight into who I am and sort of what's made me who I am today. You know, this isn't a staged video. It's not something where I've got an awful lot of lights around me and there's people telling me things or there's cues or anything like that. It's totally me deconstructed, but it's real. It's not staged. Because when you think about it, life isn't staged. It wasn't staged when I got struck down with agoraphobic anxieties for 7 years of my life and trying to bring 5 children up when I'm so captured by panic attacks that I couldn't even move outside my home. I couldn't go up to the school to see my kids because I was scared that someone might actually talk to me. And if they talked to me, then I'd be trapped. And if I was trapped, then I'd get a panic attack. And what was a panic attack like for me? Well, the first one I ever had was in a hairdresser, the place where we love to go as women and have our hair done and, you know, yik yak and all that sort of thing. But for me, the first time when I got one in a hairdresser, I was sweating so badly, cold sweats. My heart was palpitating. I couldn't feel myself swallowing. I thought I was choking. I thought I'd swallow my tongue. All these thoughts that were going through my mind, and they were going through a split second just like that, you know. It was so quick. And all I wanted to do was get out of there. And the more I realised I was trapped and I couldn't because my hair wasn't done, I felt worse and worse. And then finally the hairdresser, you know, sprays the water on you, and the relief I got, and, you know, I as soon as she said, you know, would you like me to blow dry your hair? I was like, no, thank you, I'm getting out of here. And, you know, I did, and I did pay up. But that struck me down for 7 years, that did. And after that, and it was in the early 90s, and we didn't have internet resources like we did or like we do now. And, you know, so to try and find out what was going on with me, I didn't know. And I went to doctor after doctor, and then they wanted to put me on 2 antidepressants. And then, of course, if people would come over and see me, I didn't know what to do. So back in those days, we had a lot of barbecues. And so, you know, I'd start to have a drink. Before you knew it, I'd be having a drink when people came around to try and get me through that fear that I had of people coming near me. And so, as with antidepressants and with alcohol, really bad mix, you know. And before I knew it, because I couldn't take my kids up to the school, and because I couldn't have that, and if anyone has ever heard or seen the show on the TV that was called The Waltons Family, which was a great big table set in American country, and it had the grandparents and the parents and all the kids. And I had my Waltons table, but I couldn't, you know, I couldn't live the life of the mother that I wanted to be, and being able to go up to the school and interact with the school as I wanted to be able to be a part of my children's life. I couldn't drop them off. I couldn't pick them up. I couldn't go to swimming lessons. I couldn't do any of that. And I didn't know what was happening to me. I had no idea. And then finally one day I read in the local paper about a person that dealt with people that had anxieties. And I thought that may be something I had. So I went along and I learned what anxieties were. And that was probably the breakthrough of when I started to get myself in a better situation in life. And then from that, I heard about how hypnotherapy would work. And so I went back to my doctor and I said to him, I want to go to a hypnotherapist, and if you could refer me to a psychologist or someone who did hypnotherapy. Well, we're back in the 90s, okay, so he thought I was just being a bit of a, I don't know, he probably thought I was off the planet or something, and he said, oh, those people don't work. But he referred me to a psychologist, and I went, and the psychologist did 3 sessions with me with hypnotherapy. And I was able to go out on my own. I was able to start living life. And before I knew it, I was up at the school. The people at the school realised that the children did have a mother. And, you know, I was there. And from that, it grew to, in the little small township that I live in, we had the first anxiety group. And we all looked at each other, and there were so many of us there that all suffered, but no one knew because we were too scared. And, this is about what I'm about now too. I'm about the stigma attached to mental health. And, from that, my love of the mind and the respect for the brain and how powerful it can be, it was just amazing how it got there. And I'd gone from, having Valium all the time and antidepressants and, drinking too much alcohol, suicidal thoughts because I felt so useless. And the time when I went to sit at my table with all my children at my Walton's family table that I wanted so much because I grew up like an only child with my father that had died when I was 18 months old. So I had only my mother. So to have this table with everyone around me and then to sit there one night and have a panic attack, I lost my Walton's family table. I lost the table I wanted. I lost everything I dreamt about. And so why did this happen to me, And that's sort of the journey I went on to. I mean, at the time when I went through that, my mother was unfortunately had Alzheimer's disease. And so it was quite difficult dealing with that situation. And I didn't want my mum in a home, and yet she was in a home. And so that was a situation brought about by an older sister of mine. And my sisters, they were like 6 and 9 years older than me. So it was like I grew up sort of on my own. And at the same time that went on, I was pregnant and we'd bought a business that was a manufacturing business. And so I spent a lot of my early part of my life in the manufacturing industry, and that business grew and grew and grew, and it got bigger and bigger. And at the time it was getting bigger, I was also looking after my mother. I was probably pregnant with my 4th child at that stage, and my children run very close in ages, a year apart, and then 3 and 5 years apart. And that whole experience then was brought about by all these things that was going on in my life. And when my mother, when I was 29, and this is around that time, my mother had told me that I was adopted. So I had the adoption on my mind. I had an older sister that was 6 years older than me that said to me, well, you've got to go find your real parents. So then I had to go and look for my real parents. Well, that was a journey I did too. And I did. I found my mother, and I found out that I had a real brother, and I found out that my father was still alive, and that, he was actually a Macquarie Street surgeon. So he was actually in the city that I grew up in. I probably walked past his surgery or place many, many times. I, went on the journey of finding my biological family, and that my mother was one of 13 children, I think it was. And all of a sudden, I went from not really having anyone to having this family, very, very large family. But then I lost touch with her. And, it always seemed to be really hard to have that relationship with my mother. And my brother, I don't know what happened to him. He was so excited to see me, and then he went. So I've had a lot of disappointments, and I've had to go through these things. And then I educated myself, and I thought, what a better way, because I was so just fascinated with the mind and how it went on. But I wanted to know more. So apart from reading, I learned and I studied and I studied. I studied clinical hypnotherapy. I studied counselling. I went through and I studied naturopathy, NLP practitioner. I've studied all these things to get to where I am now. I've put my businesses through everything to get from a small, tiny manufacturer to a preferred supplier for major motor companies. I've taken other businesses on to similar journeys. I've had such a passion for marketing and for focus. And it's focus, focusing on something. And then looking back on the events and the trials and tribulations that life gives us, and turning those into positive and empowering moments in our life. And I've done that with mine. And I've done it with other people that have been lost, who have been overweight and they can't get off that cycle of eating for emotions or not realizing what they're eating, or they're stuck with anxieties and they're trapped, or people that have been in business for years and years and, you know, times move with business and unfortunately they've got lost or left behind, or their momentum or their passion or something's gone and they haven't known how to get that back. Well, that's where I come in. See, I've had the real life lessons, and I've had the lessons, not all of what everyone's had, and not everyone will have what everyone's had, but I've had a good deal of them. I've had a deal of being a mother. I've had a deal of, you know, coming through life situations. My mother with Alzheimer's disease, being adopted by parents that were in their 49 years old. So basically growing up with grandparents. I've been married. I've been divorced. I've come out from a marriage to say I'm gay. I've done all these things and it's all my truth. It's my truth. And I live my truth now. And what I want to do for people is I want to help them to live their truth. I want to help them to live. I want them to know that there's endless possibilities out there. But I don't want to empower you. I want to teach you how to do your own self-empowerment, because that truly is the best empowerment, when you can control your own self-empowerment and that you realize your strengths, and that it's not being egotistical to say, I'm good at this, I'm great, and going forward with it and focusing and creating your dreams. I've created so many of my dreams and I want to show everyone how to do that. I want to show as many people who hit on the next thing after this and say, right, I want to connect with you, Kathryn Gene. Well, then that's great, because you're the one I want to connect with. I want to connect with the person that wants to live life, that wants to get that focus back in their business, that wants their business and get the adrenaline rush from when they get that deal, or when they get that next opportunity and that goal gets done and they can look at it and they can say, I did that. That's what I want. That's what I want for you. And that's what I want to teach you to get. And with the combination of being able to say now that I can holistically do that, and not just from textbook learning and coming out and saying, well, textbook says XYZ. You know I'm coming from my own life experience. You know I've been down there. You know I've manufactured. I've run QA systems. I've spoken to all great big fleet dealers. I've exported. I've imported. I've brought up 5 children, as I've said. Try teaching 5 children how to drive and you'll know that I can put up with a lot of stress. But that's the thing. They're life experiences. And wouldn't it be great if you're struggling now, that you can now take that opportunity to turn all those experiences around and you can make them gifts. And that's what I want to show you. So do yourself a favour, but only if you're ready. Don't waste your time. Don't waste my time. If you're truly ready, contact me. Send me an email and put at the top, the space in the subject matter, you want to write, I'm truly ready. If you write, I'm truly ready, I will give you 20% off your first visit with me. So you connect with me today.